In today's video, we are going to discuss our new age of English known as 18th century. Earlier in our previous videos, we have discussed three different ages which include Old Age, Middle English Age and Renaissance Age. And today is the turn of 18th century and later on we will discuss all ages in detail with all the famous genres, writers and a lot of interesting things. So let's start with our video of the 18th century. I have created a playlist and I will provide the link in description so you can open the playlist and see all the three videos of other English ages. So 18th century is an age which is also known as Augustan age, Neoclassical age or Enlightenment age. If there is a question that explain Enlightenment age or Neoclassical age or Augustan age, it means that the paper setter is asking about the 18th century. And 18th century is also known as independent age. Why? Because it doesn't take anything from the previous ages. So as a whole, it means that 18th century is an independent age which doesn't take anything from the previous ages. It creates its own genres and own interesting things. As we have discussed in our previous video about the Renaissance age, and we have discussed that Renaissance support humanism. Basically, humanism means respect for the humanity, all the rights of the humanity, no discrimination on the basis of color, caste, and creed, and all these. So these things are included in humanism that everyone, no matter from which class they belong to, they will get equal rights. But 18th century totally opposed the concept of humanism. Why they oppose the concept of humanism? They say that humans do mistakes, so the one who do mistakes is not to be respected. They say that humans are with flaws, so humans should not be respected. So this is basically the main concept of 18th century, that they were against humanism. They were not supporting the humanism concept which the Renaissance support in their own time. So this was a basic theme of the 18th century, that they were against humanism, they were against humanity. Now we will see the social division of the 18th century. As we have seen in the previous ages that there were only two ages which include the lower class and secondly the upper class. There was no concept of any other class. But in the 18th century, the people of lower class struggled a lot. They do struggle, they get education, they try their best, and a new class was emerged in 18th century known as the middle class. So the middle class emerged in the 18th century. Middle class emerged from the lower class. Lower class struggle, lower class get education. They don't have enough time to go in the theaters and to enjoy. They struggle in their life. They were working, and from lower class a new class emerged known as the middle class. So at that time, people were not wasting their time, especially the lower or the middle class. They were struggling with their lives, they were getting education, they were educating their children, they were developing their surroundings, and all these. So this was the social division, three classes. As we have seen in our previous slide that 18th century people were struggling a lot. They were getting education. They don't have enough time to go in the theaters and to enjoy the dramas. They were struggling with their lives. They were again doing jobs and all these to develop themselves socially, economically and all. So by their struggles, especially of the lower class, which later emerged the middle class, magazines or we can say the journals were formed at that time. At that time, a new genre named as novel was also emerged, and at that time, novel was not published at a single time. For example, if a novel has 5 chapters and the writer is done with the first chapter, he will go to the publication center and publish his first chapter into the magazine or a journal. And later on, when he will finish with the second, third, and fourth, he will publish them too in the magazines. So novels were not published at the same time, they were published in little parts. Along with it, the political system was also developed, parliamentary system was formed, and economic trade and commerce was there in the 18th century. So as a whole, if we see that 18th century was having a lot of development, and they were struggling with their lives to seek more improvement. I hope you understand till now. Now we will see the major genres of the 18th century. As in our previous ages, we have seen that in the Middle English, in the Old, or in the Renaissance, that the main focus was on the poetry and on the prose. But if we talk about the major genres of the 18th century, so poetry, fiction, novel, and prose were the four major genres of the 18th century, and the novel was more focused because it was a new genre. Now we will see the division of age. Basically, this age started around 1701 and extended till 1800. So, in this time period of 99 years, this age was divided into three main parts. Three main parts are basically divided according to the genres, that which genre was focused in which time period. So number one is the Augustan age. Basically the Augustan age started around 1700 or 1701 to 1745. So in this time period of 45 years, poetry, prose and novel was focused a lot. So novel emerged in this time period. And second is sentimentalism. So sentimentalism it basically start around 1745 to 1780, and in which, as I said earlier, that novel was emerged. So novel was focused a lot in this second period. And if we talk about the third division of this age, so that was Gothic. So basically it started around 1780 and extended till the end of the age around in 1800. So in which a novel was focused, and novel was now written in different styles. So this is the division of the 18th century. Now we will see some of the themes and features of this 18th century. That what are the basic themes and features, as different ages have different themes in their writings. So in the theme and feature of the 18th century were satire, basically humorous writing was there in a funny and mocking way. They were representing their different things, and order and balance was their rational thinking, reasoning. They were focusing on reasoning, reasons, individualism. They were not focusing on the whole society. They were focusing on one person. They were writing on individual person. Then there were realism. They were writing on reality, not on only the fiction and all these. And along with this, morality was their main moral values. Now we will see some of the famous writers of the 18th century and their contributions. So, number one writer of the 18th century is Alexander Pope. Alexander Pope is basically one of the famous writer of the 18th century, who was also a writer and also a translator. He studied different languages, and then he translated them into English, especially the Greek and the Latin. Second famous writer of the 18th century or neoclassical enlightenment or the Augustan age was Jonathan Swift. Jonathan Swift was a famous novelist and essayist, mean he was writing novels and essays. Third is Joseph Addison. Basically, Joseph Addison was also writing on different essays. He was also a novel writer, but mainly he was writing essays. Fourth is Daniel Defoe. Daniel Defoe, famous work, as you all familiar with the Daniel Defoe. One of the famous work is Robinson Crusoe. You all know about Robinson Crusoe. I also read Robinson Crusoe in almost in class 5, in which we learned that there was a small boy who wanted to visit the sea, and he visited, and he was struggling a lot with his fate. His ship was always sunk and destroyed, and all these, and finally he started living on the island and all. So this is a big and interesting story about a person who wanted to travel sea, and he traveled. So, the fifth famous writer of the 18th century or the age of the Enlightenment age and all. So, fifth is Samuel Richardson. Samuel Richardson was also a famous writer of the 18th century. He also wrote Pamela and Clarissa, and he was one of the famous writer of the 18th century. And number six is Henry Fieldings. Henry Fieldings basically wrote Tom Jones, and Samuel Richardson and Henry Fieldings basically are the poets, are the writers of sentimentalism from 1745 to 1780. Then number seven is Anne Radcliffe. She was a girl, and she wrote on Mysteries of Udolpho. Women were not allowed to go into the theaters at that time, so this was another reason of the growth of the women writers. Along with Anne Radcliffe, eighth writer of the 18th century is Mary Leopold. Mary Leopold is one of the another female writer, and basically these two were the poets of the time of the 18th century. So, as a whole, there were a lot of writers, poets, novelists, essayists, and all these. And I have mentioned some of them, and I have mentioned some of their important contribution in the 18th century. So, if we summarize this age, we have seen that this age basically start around 1701 and till 1800, and basically it occurred after the Renaissance age, which was the age of rebirth, revival, and the 18th century opposed the concept of humanism which Renaissance support. This age is also known as independent age because it doesn't take anything from the previous ages. It tried to take all its own things, and we have seen that novel was one of the famous genre of this age, and novel emerged in this age. So thank you so much. This was all from my side. Subscribe my channel, like the video if you understand something, comment if you have any queries, and you can also SMS on Instagram if you have any question. Thank you so much. Need your support.